Hello and welcome to this, the second episode of our Betting Clever series, a chance to discuss some of the topics around in the world of profitable betting. I've got a guest today, returning guest. It's Tom Brownlee from bookiebashing.net. Welcome back to the pod, Tom.
Pete, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. I've moved into a studio. Just telling you, moved into a studio. The first podcast recorded in a professional studio today. Now COVID has allowed opportunity to do that. So hopefully it's coming through a little clearer than usual.
Yeah, fancy. So if Guns N' Roses kick you out in about half an hour, we know why. Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry, Slash. You're gonna have to wait. Yeah. So, like I said, this episode, this series of episodes are just an opportunity to discuss, some of the topics. It's not really betting tips. Not going to tell you who to back in the Champions League. It's a general discussion of football. Today's going to be about football, but betting profitably, and whether it be advantage play, following tipsters, whatever your angle is, you're not going to get any bookmaker affiliate or bookmaker promotions here. And to kickstart things with that, Tom, tell me about what's your biggest bookmaking fail story. Maybe it's the worst bet that you've ever seen or the worst odds that you've ever seen offered.
I mean, there's plenty of candidates for that. I notice regularly that as you climb up the scale, especially after Leicester won the Premiership at 5,000 to 1, I think there was a fundamental shift after that. And a lot of managers got together and said, we're just going to cap things now. We're going to cap the bets at 1,000 to 1. But they keep offering progressively worse bets after that. If you have a look at the your odds, for example, they'll say Manchester United to score 3 goals and have 5 corners will be 10 to 1. Manchester United to score 5 goals and have 10 corners might be 1,000 to 1. But then as you keep on climbing, they cap it at 1,000 to 1. You wonder who's betting on those higher and higher sort of goals and corners bets. There was one today on the Paddy what odds Paddy coupon. This is a shop coupon with 16 different bets on it that you can bet various different sort of corners, goals, goal scorers over the day. They've got on the Championship tonight 26 goals or more priced up at 500 to 1. And right next to it, they've got 28 goals or more priced up at also 500 to 1. Because, of course, they want to offer 1,000 to 1 in the last one, but someone's come in with scissors and not seen how ridiculous it looks next to it. By the way, I worked them both out, and they're between sort of 10 and 3% equity there. So you're burning about 97% of your cash if you bet on either of those. So I would give them a swerve. And there was another one a couple of years ago in the Masters. This was another your odds, which was Rory McIlroy to win, Patrick Reed to finish second, and Rory McIlroy to finish third, which I tried to have £10 on that at 15 to 2 just for fun, and was knocked back and offered £1.33. So they wouldn't even take £1.50 on a bet that they couldn't lose from me. So I didn't bother giving them the £1.33.
Yeah, I mean Rory's good, but I don't think he can be first and third. Maybe Maury McIlroy might be able to stand a chance.
But in terms of brother, those are bets though. But in terms of behaviour, The one that stands out for me, I mean, everyone talks about bookie behaviour and, punter behaviour can be quite bad. But this one stands out as well because it happened to be at a time I'd gone into hospital with appendicitis, shockingly, right? But that didn't mean that the bets that I was on hadn't stopped happening. So I'm in the hospital bed covering them. And someone had pointed me in the direction that there was a casino equity thing. So it wasn't a sports bet, although I did have a balance in there because of my sports betting. And it was, I don't really remember, it was a semi-loophole. You could bet on blackjack and you had a very good chance of winning more than William Hill thought you should have. Excuse me for not remembering the fine details, but unimportant in that, because then I went under. I withdrew my balance of several £100s and I went under, had my appendix cut out, woke up feeling a little bit groggy the next day, and I had an email from William Hill confirming the withdrawal, and I checked my bank and there was the large balance. So that was fantastic. And the very next day after that, I'm still in hospital, and what William Hill had done, it's the only time I've ever heard a bookmaker do this. They reversed the withdrawal, and I didn't know this was possible, but they actually got the bank to send the money back to them from people's bank accounts. And that means that had I had an overdraft, or had anyone had an overdraft, and you went into your overdraft because William Hill had sucked that money out, you would have incurred charges. And that was really bad. I've only ever heard about that happening once. And I wasn't even aware that it could happen. So yeah, if you ever withdraw from the bookmaker and you think your money's safe, do give it a little period of time after, because apparently they can reverse the withdrawal within a period of time if they want to.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I never heard of that, but fancy doing that to a man in hospital as well. That's shocking. But that's William Hill for you. You know, I think if people want to learn more about William Hill, I think they should listen to one of your recent podcasts where you discussed your court case with them. And I know you've been talking about that over time, and probably only a small amount you could talk to prior to the decision being reached and you get into court. But it tells you a lot about William Hill and how they operate.
It tells you a lot about William Hill. It tells you also a lot about the UK legal system, that two identical cases can go up in front of the courts and one can win and one can lose, which is, it's extraordinary, but it's the game that we play. You've got to suck it up. You've got to play the game. The game is the game, as a wise man once said.
Indeed, the game is the game. And talking about the game, let's move on to the beautiful game, because the football season's just restarted across all the main leagues in Europe. And there's a lot of focus on football betting from many people. They're looking at what they're going to bet on this season. They're going to take some anti-post bets, and maybe if they're following tipsters on which ones to follow, or they're going to take some strategies or tools like your site offers. But then I'm curious, how much of a part of your betting portfolio does football play? In terms of whether it just be the amount of time or energy you put into it, or the proportion of the portfolio it fills. From my perspective, football betting, I love football. That's my number one sport. But yeah, I bet on it. It's not my number one sport to bet on. So I'm just curious as to how it fits in for you, Tom.
Yeah, it's tier 3 for me. I'm a huge advocate of golf first. And a lot of the time during the summer months, I'll sort of set things up on a Thursday and then I can watch it till a Sunday, and then I have 3 days off leading up to the next Thursday. And I quite like that quality of life. That's like lots of time off. Whereas there's one thing I didn't like about last season, the football, and that's that they staggered the Premiership kickoffs so that no two games kicked off at the same time. I really disliked that, because just in terms of a sort of not just a quality of life, but a quality of enjoyment of the football. It's no longer a special thing to tune into the Premiership match when there's one kicking off every couple of hours, 7 days a week. So I'm really happy to see last Saturday they went back to 5 games at a time, 5 games at 3 p.m. last Saturday, I think. So I'm about 50% golf, and then 30 to 40% horse racing, because just the amount of equity there is undeniable, and the rest of it is made up with football. But football has been an everstay. If you ever want to just tune in, catch a match in the evening on any day of the week, there's always some value somewhere to be had.
It is, isn't it? It's always on. People understand the sport. Where you get into some other sports like golf, or some of the US sports, for example. Sometimes there's quite a kind of a hurdle to overcome to understand the sport and all the nuances and how to bet up on it. But obviously, everyone really kind of knows how to bet on football. And I think it's part of the disconnect that people have. If you're betting, and it's not a hobby. If you betting just for kicks, a bit of fun, in a sensible manner, then absolutely you could bet on a sport that you like. But I feel like it's a disconnect if you're starting to try and make a profit, is that you don't necessarily, the sports that you love, bet upon them the most, and often I find anyway, take a sport like golf, which again fills a part of my portfolio. I've grown to love and have more interest in the sport from betting upon it, and because it's become like a function of my portfolio, a large proportion of it. And the same for other sports like tennis. The more you start to bet on it and make a profit on a sport, the more it can engage your interest.
Yeah, but it works the other way around as well, though. I tend to find that if I stick something on, be it rugby, cross-country skiing, curling, I find that I almost have to have a tenner or £20 on something to maintain my interest, almost to keep to sort of keep my interest in the game, to keep it from dwindling. An example recently, I think, was the France versus the USA in the Olympics. It's the dream team, and I'm not in the basketball. I'm not a huge basketball aficionado, but I was reading up about it, and I switched it on. And as fascinating as it was, I'm not learning anything. I'm not teaching myself anything about how the market moves, where a 3-pointer is hit and a 2-pointer is hit, and one team goes on a heater and the other team starts to miss every shot. And weirdly, some people could say maybe that's compulsive disorder, but for me, it's skin in the game. As soon as I've stopped 20 quid on France at 5-1, which is a measly £100 payout, so it doesn't really mean anything in the long run. But all of a sudden, I'm fascinated about, and I'm really paying attention to where the odds are going and the movements and why it's the market is reacting and changing to these 2 points and these 3 points, and it can sort of keep me interested. And a little bit the same with football, once I'm financially invested into the game, I take it a lot more seriously and try and sort of crack the code and break the problem of where are the edges, where are the angles, and more importantly, what are the areas that should be avoided, because the markets are just shaped so efficiently that it's too difficult to try and beat those particular markets.
Yeah, really interesting. Like a bit like Sky would say, is it matters more when there's money on it? Is that them? I don't know, but that's the marketing marketing ploy. And it's interesting though, because in-play betting, from my understanding, I was chatting to Brian Chappell from Justice for Punters. We're talking about people with a gambling disorder. And it's very clear that in-play football betting is a main driver of that. It's a key indicator. If somebody is betting a lot on in-play football and going on tilt, if you like, on those sports, it's often it's a way for bookmakers to quickly identify people that maybe they should be kind of being careful about, and how much they deposit, how much they stake. For that reason, people. So that balance isn't there from your point of view of you're wanting to crack the code from people who are just sticking on the South American League at 2 a.m. and having a bet because they can't watch a game without.
The difference there is one is strategic and one is impulsive. I think the problem with in-play betting is for most people it can be impulsive. It should be said, however, if you're watching a game, especially I remember South Africa versus Japan in the World Cup a few years ago, maybe not the World Cup, just gone, the one before that. And I'm watching the match, and of course South Africa are the better rugby team. They're the stronger, they're the bigger team, they're the favourites. But in the first 10 minutes, you couldn't pick between the two of them. The Japanese were really up for it, and there'd been no score on the board, but there'd been no real possession movement of the ball. There'd been a lot of offsides and ball turning over, and obviously, you knew that the Japanese were going to tire over the match, but it just wasn't as clear-cut as it was pre-match. And pre-match, the odds were 200-1 for the Japanese to win that match. And 10 minutes in, the odds were still 200-1 for the Japanese to win that match. The in-play market, the market makers had not reacted to how up for this game the Japanese were, and I was just shocked. And sometimes I think in-play markets are set by people who had taken a position before the game started, and in the first 10-15 minutes had just not reacted and changed their position based on what they can see with their eyes on the television right in front of them. And I swept up that 200-1, and they won it, I think, in the 82nd or 83rd minute of the game. From memory, I know they won. I don't know if it was a late winner or not. And I'll hold on to that because I think that 200-1 is still the biggest in-play victory that I had. And it was all about just, I'm looking around. Does no one else see what I see here? That this is a fairly equal match 10 minutes in. And I imagine, as I say, there's a lot of people with in-play betting who are just impulsively throwing darts without that sort of strategic reasoning behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine as well, maybe a game like that, it's not the most high-profile game, especially, in South Africa it would be, but for most of the world, it's not going to be the most high-profile fixture on a sport like rugby, especially. It might not be the most high profile. So therefore, you might not have a trader watching it intensively, like you might have a trader watching a Premier League game intensively and adapting to the game and the tactical maneuvers, or we all know that red cards or things like that might change a game, but the subtlety about the performances, the relative strengths and weaknesses of a team as you see that unfold, that's really interesting. And I guess that if segues to a question that I had about a lot of the time, making a profit in the top tier games is very difficult. And I often find that from the tipsy review perspective, especially, it's those second tier competitions like the Dutch League, the second division Spanish League, the Championship, these kind of leagues where maybe it's not the same focus and intensity on those leagues, and maybe attention from the odds compiler or even the amount of money swirling around those markets where the greater edge exists. Is that something that you found as well?
Yeah, right. I mean, I 100% agree with you there. There are certain markets and games to be avoided because you just cannot think that you have an edge over the compiler. All betting is a trade-off between you and the person that you're betting with. If you're choosing to bet in play against the traders that are setting the market on the Sunday English Premier League game, then good luck to you. If you are so good that you can calculate an edge in that, there are better things for you in life. I would maybe go and work for one of these large in-play odds compiling companies where your salary might outweigh the amount of equity you're probably able to get on over time with them. So I would tend to ignore trying to beat. I certainly look at the Premiership odds, but if I look at the Premiership odds and I see Newcastle are 8-1 and I'm thinking that looks high, my next thought has to be, so I've then therefore got something wrong. Someone must know something that I've missed or I haven't assumed, because I cannot think that I have any discernible knowledge that could beat the market. There's a police or ambulance going by there, so take a drink. I can't possibly think that I can beat something as liquid and with so much intelligence and backing behind it and that weight of money. However, there's not so much liquidity as we move down the leagues into the secondary leagues and even the tertiary leagues, but also in the big games, there's not so much liquidity in the secondary and tertiary markets. So perhaps match odds in the Premiership is a very difficult market to beat. And to a certain extent, Asian handicap over 2.5 goals, both teams to score, are very difficult markets to beat. But there are 100 to 200 other markets at the bookmaker, and I don't use the word stale as in we're waiting for odds to just be completely wrong. But what I mean in that is that they're not shaped, they're not changed, they're not as dynamic. We're not chasing odds as much in these secondary and tertiary markets because there isn't as much liquidity in them, and because we're not finding them shaped and cut as much as the big markets, the 1x2, the over 2.5 markets, because they're not shaped as much as that. It's possibly easier to look at them and see if we can sort of, dig out a little bit of an edge somewhere in those secondary places. So yeah, there's two different things. Either lower leagues or secondary markets are easier places to find edges and angles.
Mm-hmm. And often I know from your own website, it's some of those bets which are, if you like, two outcomes in one. So you might have both teams to score and a certain team to win, because they're not markets you can easily benchmark against an exchange. You can easily benchmark a both teams to score market on the exchange because it's there, but often you can't find the two bets in one, if you like, and therefore a site like yours, which provides the true odds on that outcome, can help you to find where there's potentially an edge to be had.
Well, yeah, I mean, you when you're doing anything, you need to have an estimation of what the price should say. I mean, I talked about the South Africa game earlier, which was 200-1. I thought maybe South Africa should have been 10-1, so that was quite clear. It's a little bit more difficult when you're talking about these secondary markets in the exchange, but you can sort of break it down. First of all, things like the match odds in both teams to score market fascinates me. This is a market where there are 6 different options. So there's draw, no, which is 0-0, and draw yes, which is 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, 4-4. And then you've got either the team to win to 0 or the team to win and both teams to score, home and away. And it's a very biased market. And by biased, I mean the bookmakers boost it quite a lot in high-profile games. And when this happens, some people will come in and they will hedge their bets against the boost, and this will make a lopsided market. Sometimes the price is a little bit artificially high, and it's very easy to test. You could take, for example, Manchester United to win and both teams to score and back that, and Manchester United to win to nil and back that. So what have you done there? You've covered both options of Manchester United to nil, you've covered both options of Manchester United to win. Compare the price you've now got against the 1x2 market, and you'll often find that it's higher. You've got evens using the match odds in both teams to score market instead of the 1.9 they are on the 1x2, and all of a sudden you've got 10% on top of the match odds market, and you just repeat and rinse that over time, and you should have enough equity. So that's a great market to go and look at. And the rest of the markets, from correct score, both teams to score, even the Asian handicap, everything can be, if you can work out a correct score market for the game, you can work out any of these secondary market. The game becomes sort of, what is your methodology for coming up with how many goals a team is going to score, their XG in the game, and then is there any bias on the 0-0? And if you can do that, then it opens up the door of 100, 200 other markets in the game that you can go and either sort of seed exchanges and see if you can pick off any value there, or go to the bookmakers and pick off any value there. The world's your oyster, really, if you can come up with the market prices yourself.
Mm-hmm. And then it becomes a matter of what you can find, whether those markets are available, or whether you can maybe look at the top goal scorer or some different areas whereby maybe a certain player's not playing, and maybe then you're still getting good odds on another one. Things that help you calculate quickly.
I'm fascinated. I'm sure that some of the biggest edges exist in the goal scorer market. We were tracking them very closely during the Euros. If anyone is any particular price for any time goal scorer, you can sort of reverse engineer that and work out how many goals they're expected to score based on their price. So if they're evens, they might be expected to score about 0.9 goals in the game, something like that. And what we did is we took every player in England versus Denmark's anytime goal scorer price just before kickoff, and we reverse engineered what we thought their XG would be and added up that XG, and it came 2.82. And if you looked on any site that was predicting how many goals were going to be in this game, it was 2.8 to 2.84. So it was slap bang in the middle by adding up all the players that were likely to start and come on as substitutes in this game. That was with a very liquid market close to kickoff. So what I want to know is, can we identify those guys that are likely to score in the game and then go out and get a big price on them before they've been priced up anywhere? It's sort of like, can we beat the market to the prices? And if we all of a sudden find out that Maguire at 16 to 1 is a hell of a price, and every time he starts the game, I'm looking at Maguire's price thinking, I don't understand how he can be so high, then get those early prices, get your money down, get trading on the exchange when there's been nothing traded before you. And again, you'll hopefully looking at 10, 20, 30% edges on those goal scorer prices. It's a lot of tracking at the same time. And I think it involves, it's a little bit easier if you've got access to APIs and scraping tools and things like that. But the goal scorer markets, they're fun as well. The first goal scorer market is literally my favorite to bet on, simply because you turn the game on, you've got a couple of first goal scorers. The minute the first goal goes on, you can turn the game off whether you've won or lost. So it's just done and dusted at that point.
It sounds like a good one for watching my team, Everton, because generally when the first goal goes, then I do turn it off because it's generally against us.
Yeah.
And so I think with the football betting, it's not straightforward. From my understanding and appreciation of what you're saying here, is that it's not something I certainly don't find it in terms of tipsters like very straightforward in terms of this league, this high-profile league, and these high-profile ways. You really have to be nuanced and strategical in your thinking, whether that be going lower leagues or side markets, or some of the strategies you're talking about there with top goal scorer. Because the reality is, a lot of the people who make big sums betting on football from like the syndicates, the Star Lizards, the Tony Blooms, and the big Asian syndicates, they're from what I can gather, they're betting large sums. They have a huge bankroll and making 1-2% ROI maybe with a big bankroll, and that's really beyond the realms of most average punters, isn't it? If you're making 1% to make £1,000, you're going to have to stake 100 grand on a weekend, and that's just not really within the realms of what most people can do.
Yeah, 1% ROI is a difficult way to churn a full-time living. Again, not only is the problem that your bankroll has to be quite significant, but then you've got to solve the problem of getting significant amounts of money down, which is always really difficult. I mean, if you're starting to get restricted on online bookmakers, then 1% of I was offered £1.33 on that Rory McIlroy earlier, so that would be 1.33p. So that's going to be a few of those bets before I can start putting dinner on my kids' table. So there are a few different ways to sort of skin a cat in the sort of professional gambling game. And what those guys are doing is they are coming up with an opinion and setting their opinion against the traders that have sort of started and seeded the market at the beginning, the odds compilers. And that's a very new, as far as I'm concerned, that's more skilled than what I can do. It's a very nuanced way of making a living at gambling. You're taking them on, you're sort of taking them on one or two games, and you're beating them long term, and fair play about that. In terms of what we're doing, though, we're sort of coming at it from a different angle. We're like, okay, so there are a lot of people out there with a lot of knowledge, more knowledge than I have. For example, someone might know in the Portuguese second division, the Benfica B team have this 17-year-old wonder kid in reserves, and all of a sudden tonight, unexpectedly, he's been drafted into the first team because of an injury. Now, that's a very specialist amount of knowledge that I can't possibly have. And they get on at the early price and start driving it down, and that price might half by the time it comes to SP. And well done them sort of getting that early price and driving it down. I, however, am much more comfortable coming at it from an analytical phase of saying, right, they're driving the price down. Who else is driving the price down on other teams? And can we look at this at an industrial scale where we're looking at all leagues and all teams and sort of start attacking anyone where the money is contracting? And I'm not actually coming at this now from any sort of odds compiling viewpoint or any knowledge of the football teams, the injuries, or the specialist players viewpoint. I'm not taking on the odds compilers. I'm piggybacking on the smart money. I also make no qualms about that whatsoever because, one, it makes my life easier, and two, over time I've figured out that I can turn over a hell of a lot higher ROI than that 1 or 2% by doing that.
And let's talk about the smart money, because let's talk about your football coupon, your shop coupon strategy. That something that we've just done a very detailed review at SBC about exploring this strategy and how you've utilized it, because it does take this theory of smart money and, like you say, overseeing. It's a bit different because you're talking about betting and bookmaker shops, which we'll get into, but it's the theory of smart money and getting in at the right point, because that if you can, get in before it hits SP or closing odds, and you can get in at some point along the period that the odds contract, you are going to obtain value just because it's smart money and you're kind of joining in the right trend.
Yeah, right. So football coupons we've been betting on for the better part of a decade. And it was a while ago that we sat down and we'd been betting in shops because there just tends to be a lot of beneficial reasons to bet in shops in terms of restrictions, in terms of the amount of money you can get down, in terms of the value that can find it. It all sort of swayed us that betting in shops for the last decade has been easier and more profitable than betting online. And one of the things we were looking at a long time ago is the football coupons, and we were sort of breaking down how can we beat the football coupons. As we say, we don't have that knowledge of the Benfica reserves team. So we can't beat them that way. And even if we did have that knowledge of the Benfica reserves team, a football coupon in a shop isn't necessarily the place that we would get the best price. The Tony Blooms, the 1% ROIers, they will be betting at the best price they can possibly get. And football coupons simply aren't that. When a football coupon is first printed and leaves the shop. So you've got the football games coming up on Saturday and Sunday. Today's Wednesday. They will have been printed this morning. So they're 3 days ahead of time. And they will look at what they used to anyway, 20 years ago, consider what they would think fair odds for a football team were, and then price up the game to 110, 112, 115%. Some of the charlatans maybe even more margin. So that's they sort of add that margin on to the home draw and away team. And once that margin's in place, then you're already at a disadvantage if you think that you can beat them. So if you think the Benfica are going to win, or the Benfica B team are going to win this weekend, the football coupon isn't the obvious place to go and bet on them, because it's not going to be the best price you can get. Of course, if you are a long-term winner, the exchanges become a little bit difficult as well. You either have premium prices at Betfair, or in my position, you lost your Betfair a long time ago because of the money that was churning through there. And unless you can get these concessionary exchange rates like 0 or 2% at Smarkets, then you're going to be sort of eroding your edge there. And it was all coming down to, well, can football coupons be beaten then? Because if you're going to beat football games, they're not the obvious choice to look. But that was the wrong way of looking at the picture, we thought anyway. Let's not look at the static prices. We're not going to look at the price Manchester United at 10 to 11, Arsenal at 4 to 1, and so on and so forth. And you can get a better price elsewhere. If you just look at it in that black and white picture, then football coupons either can't be beaten, or if they can, you could beat them by higher amounts using an exchange or going and searching for best price at another bookmaker. So instead, we flipped it on its head and we said, can we start betting at the best prices on the football coupon? And the best prices in the football coupon, instead of just working them all out ourselves, we have an exchange for that, which is the theory of the smart money is shaping the exchange. And if we can benchmark the entire coupon against the exchange and then track that up until kickoff, we can do a couple of things. First of all, we can see who is priced closest to the exchange price. But secondly, a nice thing comes out of this. We can start to identify the smart money. Who is the smart money coming in for? The steamers. Everyone that rises above 90, well, if the coupon is priced to 91%, anything that's 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97%, that is money that is coming in against the static price. There is some reason that people think that price is good. Perhaps it's just recreational money. You get the occasional cup game where everybody wants the underdog to win and they're pushing the price down for no reason other than it would be fun. Maybe it's a television game and you're watching a non-league team versus a championship game team, and everyone hates the championship team. And maybe it's a Millwall or your Everton, and you're just watching. There's no reason, there's no smart reason for the non-league price to come in. But that's an exception. Look at the global picture of all the price movement, that delta movement between the original price when the coupon was printed and the price leading up to kickoff. The theory was that more often than not, by ranking all of those teams on the coupon and betting on the top teams over and over and over again, we are going to see some profit, turn a little bit of an edge or an angle. And the first season that we did it really sort of shaped the methodology. The first thing you find out is that cuts on coupons, especially at some bookmakers, once it hits about the 100, 101, 102% against the exchange, the price just goes. And that's because they don't want people coming in and placing large arbitrage bets. About a decade ago, you could have gone in with 500 quid and bet on a 5% arb on a single team from the no man's land and cleaned up at the bookmaker. But they got wise to that because so many people started doing it, and they cut off that angle. So no longer can you find the large arbitrage bets. One of the ways of doing it is that they started introducing coupons either that do not have liquid markets. So there's coupons for everything at the bookmaker now, from team to win in over 2.5 goals, team to win in both halves, team to win in both teams to score. And they started pushing those instead because those markets aren't liquid, so it's harder to find any odds. And the second thing that they did is on some of the more valuable coupons, they sort of said, right, you guys are going to have to place trebles or higher in an attempt to try and sort of stop the arbors for taking advantage. Well, now, if you're coming at this from an advantage play point of view, this is great, because if we think we've already got an edge and you're forcing us into placing trebles, you're compounding our edge for us. Our original edge, now we can multiply all of those sort of equity bets together, and we're getting more than we started off just placing singles. And so by the end of the first season, we were placing multiple trebles on the same team, maybe 7 teams on a coupon, and we were placing trebles within those 7 teams. 7 teams trebles in a coupon is 35 different bets, 35 different trebles. And by the time we started doing this, the profit graph just took off. Those first 24 months, it was fantastic. It was brilliant. We really thought that we sort of uncovered a way of getting one over on the bookmakers on the shop coupons. So that was our strategy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like I say, it's working on trebles and upwards. You can't get on the singles because arbors kind of cut that off, and you place them in trebles, which does lend itself to compounding profits, maybe high variance as well. That's certainly something that we observed in the review. But if you're patient and you continue to do this and you continue to beat the market, that edge will manifest itself, and you'll have that weekend where you have a big win. But it's certainly something for people who are patient.
Yeah, the volatility can be significant. I think we've twice had a full season where we broke even. One, I think, was 2015, 2016, and the other one was the last season that's just gone. I think almost a year ago I had a big win, and then since then broken even, although the last 12 months have been different to the last decade in the sense that
a lot of the shops would have been closed. Yeah. So, for however many lockdowns,
volume's been completely down in the last year.
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't go into a bookmaker shop, and even if you could, you were limited to maybe one visit for 10 minutes a day.
And that's an issue because it takes time to fill out these coupons, especially if you're placing. We were at the beginning placing multiple pushers coupons, multiple 7 Heaven coupon, multiple this coupon, multiple that, same teams over and over again, multiple shops, and now at the last year it's been. Although at least in the last year they're asking us to wear masks in the shops, which means that we can retain some sort of anonymity. I mean, although having said that. Coupons have always been one of those things that I have not known anyone to be restricted as a result of hitting them. I've been into Worcester and picked up 5 figures cash. I've been into other shops and picked up 4 and 5 figures cash. I know other people. It's quite a lot of fun. You go and stand in the kitchen because they're wary that you don't want to. The staff kitchen, they're wary that you don't want to count all that money out in front of the customers. And I don't know of another way of regularly beating the bookmaker where they allow you to continue to bet. They phone the traders up, and the worst that tends to happen is that you're knocked back to 200 quid when you wanted 400 quid or something like that, which is never the end of the day when you're betting on odds against teams. So even the masks I think are quite good for other more sensitive edges where the shops can maybe sort of cut us off quite quickly if they know who we are, but as soon as you've got it on, they don't have a clue.
No, there's a guy in a blue mask. Yeah, and it's a great strategy because, like I say, if you're limited online, as many people will be betting with many companies, especially some of the high street firms, it offers you that opportunity. I can't bet with with Betfred, William Hill in my own name, but I can go into a bookmaker shop and place them, and no one's going to check. And it's all cash as well, isn't it? It's I know they try and encourage you to kind of do online cards or whatever, but you can keep it anonymous and keep it cash. So that's the appeal of the strategy. It's there are a lot of bookmaker shops around, so you've got plenty of opportunity to go in and take advantage of the fact they cluster them. And B, you can bet on this even if you've been banned. And Of course, it's tailored towards when there's more football fixtures, but it seems the weekend and Saturday mornings, maybe even Friday evenings, Saturday afternoons is the optimal time. So it's something you can do maybe a couple hours a week and benefit from if you've got the time to go into the bookmaker shops on a Saturday afternoon, for example.
Yeah, I mean, the optimal time is 2 p.m. In the second week of February on a Saturday afternoon just before the third round of the FA Cup, which we've historically sort of noticed is the hour where there is the most amount of price movement around the coupons, and there are just so many games as well. There's so many to choose from. I mean, when you look at a football coupon, sometimes, especially during this summer and a little bit last season as well, where they stagger the games over the middle of the week and you don't have a lot of games kicking off at the same time, that can spoil a coupon, because what you're looking for is a lot of games kicking off at exactly the same time, either 3 p.m. on a Saturday or 7:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. And when you have that, team news comes out at exactly 1 hour before kickoff, and then all of those prices move simultaneously, and that's really beneficial, having all of those prices moving at exactly the same time. When all the kickoffs are staggered, as we have had over the summer and a little bit in the last 12 months, then there's sort of more attention on those prices. They can be cut, and also there's just less price movement happening at the same time, and so you have a little bit of less of an edge. So ideally, you want to be picking up a coupon with as many games as possible kicking off at exactly the same time, and then hitting that within an hour of the kickoff to get hold of that smart money, that smart knowledge, that delta movement.
Yeah, it's worth saying as well. We won't get into the specific coupons that work, because it's worth. We don't want to kind of give away the good stuff. You can read all that in the review and on your site. But it works better with certain firms and with certain coupons in particular, which have a lower margin, for example, or just traditionally offer the greatest edge. Because I was going to say as well, we're talking about cuts here, but all bookmakers don't operate the same cuts at the same time. There's no one centralized database for all the bookmakers. Some of them obviously work together, but the reaction times are slower, and so you're able to offer. I was doing it last weekend. Certain teams. The prices, obviously a lot of money has come in, so yeah, that price is going to be cut. But another one, you're still getting strong value on, because for whatever reason, somebody they haven't at this particular bookmaker firm in the shop has not cut the price. So it's worth making that clear, isn't it? You're going to get a coupon and it's going to say 6-4, but it could well have changed, and it may be evens, because so much money's come in from Thursday to Saturday, and there's the whole strategy around, making sure that you can figure out what the value still is, and obviously using your site helps with that, because there's a centralized, kind of resource where you can observe prices that have been cut and held, and that's the key part here, isn't it? To understand the strategy is knowing the bookmakers and the coupons to hit and which prices are still available.
I mean, here's a freebie: you don't have to walk into Coral Ladbrokes ever again in your entire life, unless things change there, because there's just nothing of value in those shops. And I don't understand how they take any money off recreational punters, because recreational punters aren't stupid, and I think Coral and Ladbrokes think they are. And they offer almost nothing, and they cut and they track prices, and they're just horrible. So the free bit of advice I can give away there is that just don't. If you see one of those shops on your high street, you don't ever have to walk in. You can maybe sympathise for the staff, because they'll probably be bored in an afternoon. In terms of the cut prices and the coupon, this is all part of the game. In fact, it's probably the major part of the game, is to figure out when you have to take action and when you just have to suck it up. Now, if you're extremely price sensitive, this isn't the game for you, because you cannot deal. You cannot affect what the cut prices are going to be when you take the coupon to the counter. You can do two things: you can cancel the bet, or you can accept the bet. And if you're an extremely price sensitive person and you're always cancelling the bet, I think that's the point where you're either going to lose faith with the system, because you're going to be sort of only placing 1 out of every 5 bets at the counter, or they're going to notice you that you are the kind of person that goes to the counter, bets on 7 teams. One was 6-4. They've been cut to 11-8, and that's not good enough for you. And that's not very recreational. No. That's quite price sensitive, and it's the sort of thing that could maybe leap out into the cameras on the eye of the sky. So you said there, and I wanted to pick up on this, that you might have one team that is really decent price, but then none of the other teams are. And that's the team, that's the whole reason, is that we're out for that decent price. And what the game is to take them and cover them in as many trebles with as many different teams as possible. These other 4 or 5 teams that might be in the coupon, let's say they're all maybe 92, 93%. You're not really betting on them because you're getting any value. If you wanted to be betting on them for value, take the 7% more that you'd be getting in the exchange. What you're doing is you're compounding that big bet, that single team that's at the top. You're just taking them and you're scattering them around everywhere. And as long as you're being a bit savvy and scattering them with teams that are still have moved in the right direction since the coupon was priced up, then there should be some profit at the end of the road. So yeah, it is that one team, that one price, that golden price that you find that it's held. It's like, right, let's hit this as much as possible and let's go around. I can think of several times that that's happened with maybe a team that's been 10-1, and they started off life at 10-1. You can maybe now get that 9-1 or 8-1 on the exchange, and so you've got that little bit of an arb. But now what we do is we go and compound those and throw them into trebles with as many other teams that are that high up on the table as possible.
Yeah, it's a good point that in terms of the picking those outliers, which are still really strong value, because I've been starting to compare mine to CLV, the closing line, and inevitably I'm beating them most of the time, but some are significant drops. Yeah, I'm just trying to have a look now. I don't think I've got it in front of me, but I think last week or midweek, I think Swansea were huge on there. They got piled in, but you could still get a really good price on the coupon. I think they went on to win. I think they were playing Reading.
That's always good when that smart money gets it right. Like that. Exactly. I missed the first weekend of the season. I was down in Cornwall, which incidentally, Cornwall, I don't know if you know what's happened there recently, but they now take gold bars in their vending machines. Things are so expensive. So, sorry.
Staycations, the price of staycations. Yeah.
I could have gone to Barbados for the amount of money I spent in Cornwall last weekend. I think they're taking advantage of the staycations just as much as we're taking advantage of these coupons. But yeah, so those really good prices. Now, if you're a sensitive person about the cuts and you can't find enough teams to compound Swansea into at that time, then you're losing the value of Swansea, if that makes sense. So whilst other good teams may be cut, it's that sort of quick thinking. You're at the counter, you're like, okay, this has been cut from 6-4 to 6-5, and that's quite a big cut now. That's quite a significant cut. And there's a little bit of mental jiggery pokery to be done at the counter of, do I now have a negative EV slip? How good is the best team on my slip? And is it now carrying the bad teams? And I think on average, I will have 4 or 5 good teams and 1 or 2 bad teams on a slip. And the good teams carry the bad teams. And when... Again, going back to this, if I was very price sensitive and I wanted all 7 teams to be good on every single slip, I could do that, and it would be at a cost of volume, overall volume. And volume really is key because, as we discussed before, there's a lot of high variance and a lot of volatility in this. We're really waiting around for that Swansea to come in along with another couple of teams. It's fine that Swansea won, but they do need a couple of their neighbours on the bet slip to come in as well. Otherwise, it still returns a full bust, the coupon. So it's that sort of fine balance between thinking, okay, I do have a couple of bad teams on this, but I've got 5 good teams, and I'm going to be betting multiple bet slips today, probably with the similar teams on them, because there's only a few teams where that smart money rises up to the top of the tracker. So it's the majority good, some bad, multiple slips over the day, multiple slips over the week and over the year. And those bad teams, they come out in the wash. And the good teams, the good bets, they carry them. And as I say, sort of 2 out of the last 10 years have been in profit. Have not been in profit. So I think the strategy is working.
Yeah, well, we looked at your results since, I think it was 2017. You had a breakdown of them in spreadsheet with nearly 1,000 different bets you'd placed. And I think it was a 25% ROI from And that includes last year when obviously shops were closed for a long period of time. So yeah, and you do see the graph. It's not a kind of a smooth graph going upwards left to right. It's kind of goes up and then maybe stagnates and then big jump and then the same kind of appears. So it's that you have to do it for 2 months or a season, and then you're going to have maybe half a dozen at best really good weekends whereby you're going to reap the benefits. Yeah. But most of the time you're going to be losing or breaking even, and you just have to. For many people that's just the way betting is, especially when you've got something which is high ROI. It's the high volatility. This is the truism of betting or any form of investment. You want to take a punt on something and want to make a big return, and you're going to have to be patient and expect the volatility there. So I was going to say as well, Tom, this also it works in bookmaker shops. So it's people in the UK that it certainly works with, but it's with bookmaker clustering. You can find a lot of the same shops in a vicinity. So you're talking about getting volume on. Maybe you don't want to place all your bets in the same shop. I was having a little look on Google Maps. Betfred, to pick out one company, we all love Betfred. They have 19 shops within the M60 orbital in Manchester. I know Betfred, Fred Dunn's from Salford, I think, or from Manchester anyway. And they've got 3 within a kilometre radius in the city centre. And there's five within a 2 kilometre radius in Salford, because they're obviously aiming for certain areas of the city where you're going to find the type of people who frequent betting shops. You won't find a single Betfred in very leafy Didsbury or Chorlton, but you will find 5 in Salford. So it's these areas where, and if you go to any northern cities, if you're looking at Bradford, if you start looking at Newcastle, you start looking at places like that, you're going to find a lot of the same firms and a lot of bookmaker shops. So you can just toddle off to the city centre on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and you can easily get a lot of these bets on quite easily.
Yeah, in fact, what one of my guys will do is he'll sort of travel to one city on a Saturday, and then hit those shops, and then the following Saturday, just a different city, just maybe travel east instead of north, and then go south. And that means that sort of his face is only appearing once a month in that particular radar. What I maybe would be wary of if there was a couple of Betfreds that were within a mile of each other. If you went into one and started placing some bets, and then you went into the other and started playing very similar bets, they would pick up on that, and they would, well, hold on, why did you choose 2 different shops here? And they put those bets together. The majority of people that do bet in shops, especially outside of London, are sort of recreational old men looking for a little bit of company and betting £1, £2 on the virtual racing or the horses or something like that. And it can always be very interesting when you walk up to the counter with a coupon and £200 in notes when the rest of the queue had been putting £1 or £2 or £3 on and things like that. And you can stand out. And if it was 2 shops in the same location, they would have the same area manager and questions would be asked. As I say, I don't recall anyone ever being knocked back for coupons, but if you wanted to go in and perhaps have a lucky 15 on horses, you might find that you're knocked back to SP on that instead. So it is worth maybe either hitting just one shop in an area location, or more preferably, hopefully, if you've got a buddy or a friend or an understanding girlfriend, maybe slip her the money and the instructions and they can go in and place those bets instead.
Yeah, it's certainly worth making clear that tactics are really important on this. And we go into depth, I work with you on the tactics to implement it. I've been using it myself, part of a team. And so, there's lots of information there on the tactical nous and the little things you can do and consider to make it work in practice, especially like perhaps the person you talk about there who goes to different places where you start to scale it up and you start to make significant returns from it, because you're not going to be able to continually hit the same shop if you continue to make big profits. Eventually they'll maybe scratch their heads and say, I don't know how you're beating us, but we just don't want your custom anymore, and we can't be bothered to figure out why. So definitely.
That one Betfred I picked up 12 grand for a pushers coupon. I gave it a wide berth for a year, even though it was quite convenient from where I lived, just because I know if I go back in, the area that Betfred was in, it wasn't in the center of town. It was in a little bit of a rough area. When I went to pick up the money, there was some undesirables outside in the car park who were asking me if I'd got 50p or a pound so they can go into the shop to buy some Tenant Super. And there I am sort of picking up 12 grand, not wanting them to know exactly what was going on. And you can stand out in those locations. We had a super weekend, not the one just gone, but the one before that, where my buddy, I think overall, over the 2 days of the Saturday and the Sunday, we were just shy of £20,000 in profit. And the very fortunate thing for us is that was over multiple shops in multiple cities. So whilst if that 20 grand was all in the same shop, I'm not convinced that we could go back in there and continue to bet. The bookmakers simply, even if the area manager and the shop manager hasn't got a close eye on you, the eye in the sky, which is linked up to the Gibraltar head offices, will know exactly who you are and what you're betting and what your profit and loss figures are. And quite simply, if your profit in a shop trips over a certain amount, the instruction will come from above to cut you off. So when I had that big win on the coupons, I think I was getting very close to that limit, which is why I gave it a wide berth. And now, after 12 months, if you walk in, they're not going to remember you because that was too much time that had gone past. Fortunately for my buddy, it was in multiple different shops in multiple locations, different brands. So they're not going to be able to stitch together the overall profit loss that he had. But yeah, if that had been one shop and then you win that 20 grand from that shop, then unfortunately the next time you walk in there, no matter how popular you are with the people behind the counter, it's not going to be their decision whether they can no longer take money off you or not.
Yeah. Unless you have easy access to a lot of wigs and ability to grow extensive facial hair very quickly.
Exactly.
Yes, you do need
or there's a global pandemic, and you can get the mask on.
Get your mask, and maybe you can, go to town in your mask and make it cover your eyes. any other redeeming features that you might have. So that's football coupons. So go and read that review, certainly if it interests you, because like I say, I can't bet online with some of these firms, but I can get bets down in shops, and it's a really good angle worth checking out. And we talked about bookmakers there, Tom. I want to wrap up the talk today about some of the topics around bookmaker withdrawals. If people listen to the first episode of this podcast where I was on with Rowan, we talked about the different levels of security or lack of any security that most bookmakers offer the funds that you deposit with them. It's an issue if you're considering the security of your funds, especially with smaller firms that go bust. We also talked about tactics around bookmaker withdrawals, Tom. So it's great to have you on to ask you about this, because it really varies, doesn't it, in terms of when do you withdraw your money from a bookmaker? You've put a stack of cash into it and you want to withdraw it, but you don't want to kind of raise awareness that you've won a lot of money and you're a shrewd better. So I wanted to get your sense on this, on any tactics that you might have in terms of when to withdraw.
It's a real catch-22 quandary, isn't it? Because there is no optimal solution here. I mean, I'm trying my best to bet at exchanges and just in shops, and even then, your money's not 100% safe. I know the last time I had a settlement with the runner, he came down to see me with 20 grand. He got sidetracked by a couple of girls that he knew that were quite pretty that wanted to go out clubbing. And he ended up clubbing in the city with all that money in a plastic bag in the cloakroom. And I had to drive from my house. I had to sort of wake up my wife and say, you look after the kids. I need to go and see him because I do not trust. He's a nice guy. I don't trust him to have too many beers and lose it or something like that. And this is the sort of thing that you've got to have half an eye on with the bookmakers as well. You might trust them. They might be big brands. They might be big names. They might be your best friend. But anything could happen. It's not yours until it's in your bank. And I've even got some concerns about the high street banks and things like that. A perfect example, I think, was back in the when was Black Friday? 2009, something like that. I think Poker Stars and Full Tilt Poker were huge brand names, and I had over half of the money that I had in the entire world sitting in my balance in Poker Stars. I could have had it in Full Tilt because I played a lot on both sites, but I happened to have won a little bit of money on the cash games on PokerStars, and I'd withdrawn recently from Full Tilt Poker. But those names in the poker world in 2009 were exactly the same as William Hill and Betfred in 2021. And then overnight, Full Tilt Poker became inaccessible to everybody, and PokerStars was locked out from the entire American market. And the FBI had run a background operation, and they'd found out that the people that were running Full Tilt Poker, who offered zero protection on any funds deposited in there. So you're depositing your funds and you're entering tournaments, and chips are going left, right, and center, and you presume that those funds are protected in some bank account somewhere, so that if everyone logged on and withdrew on exactly the same day, everyone gets their money. What had been happening is that you were depositing, and the owners were paying each other unbelievable bonuses, just crazy amounts of money. Everybody, there was 100 people on the board, and they were all taking $10,000, $100,000 a month in bonuses, and there was no money left, and no one had a clue where the money was going to come from if everybody wanted to withdraw at the same time. And the FBI got wind of this, and they shut down Full Tilt Poker. And if you had a balance on Full Tilt Poker at that time, it was gone. And it was an unbelievable series of events, because you kind of thought, how can this happen? And you fast forward 12 years to today, and you look at the protection offered by some of the bookmakers that are high street names and have adverts on the Sky Sports rolling all of the time, and it's barely any better than it was in 2009. The only difference is they're open and upfront about the fact that there is no protection about it, whereas before we presumed that there was protection where there was none. The only thing I can say in terms of restrictions, I think you alluded to the fact, Pete, that you withdrew from a bookmaker recently and then immediately got restricted from them, and you can't beat that. I mean, what are you going to do? Leave your money in there for the rest of your life? At some point, you've got to get hold of it. Otherwise, it's not yours. And so there's no right answer, and everyone's different circumstances will be different. If you can hold it on there forever, then you run into the risk of the bookmaker becoming insolvent and so on and so forth. So it's a really difficult one. And I can't really offer an advice on an optimal time to withdraw. All I would say is that if you have money in a bookmaker, it's not yours until it's in your bank account. It has to be considered to be toy money, recreational money, play money. I know that's easier said than done, but it's too high risk to presume that that is yours until you've got your money on it. Very difficult thing to do as well for professional gamblers who sort of mainly get their income from the betting side of things, because if a bet wins, you do have the tendency to think, well, that's next month's holidays and that's next month's coverage sorted, which is why all professional gamblers should have a significant bankroll sitting behind them somewhere else outside of the bookmakers in the eventuality that a worst case scenario happens. And also, just make sure that you keep your portfolio spread and not all your eggs in one basket. So
yeah, that's good advice there. Yeah, exactly. And you talked about with one firm, and I was going to Betfred. I have an account with Betfred, and just sometimes the way variance falls, all the winners may hit a certain account, and it seemed to fall that way. So my strategy is the one that we spoke about in the previous podcast. It was to withdraw a big chunk of it, bet a whole bunch, and then top up. And obviously, you want to do that in a relatively short space of time. You're looking like the punters maybe got lucky, taking the money out, and then there's been a hole in your pocket, and you're churning through more bets and you're putting more down. That was my strategy there. But ultimately, they took a big chunk of the balance out because I had a bunch of winners. I needed it for my bankroll. I don't like to leave it all in Betfred. They offer no account fund security whatsoever. One of the biggest firms to not do that. And then within, I think, maybe 30 minutes, I got the email. So I didn't even have a chance to adapt and to do it. But then if you compare that, Tom, with other firms, I've done the same strategy. Yeah. I think Skybet, I've not had the same issue. So it really does depend, I think, firm to firm.
What's happening there at Betfred? I mean, are you withdrawing and then they're looking at your betting patterns? If that is the case, that's kind of amazing. It's like they're not looking at your betting patterns until the moment that you withdraw. Or did you just withdraw so much money and they went, this guy's in profit, so he can't bet anymore? Which is, I sort of think probably is what happened. And again, that's lazy because you could be betting at negative EV and be in profit if you got lucky. It's mind-boggling that happened. But it's one time I remember, I don't remember, I want to think it was Coral, but I'm just blaming Coral for everything. So let's say it was them. They'd settled a bet incorrectly. And so I went onto the live chat and complained about it. And you got the initial, no, it's been settled correctly. I was like, no, please feed this somewhere and have a look at it, because, I never, I don't complain ever unless I know that I'm in the right. You have to go and look at this bet. And they said they would go away and have a look at it. 20 minutes later, I got an email saying the money's been put in your account. And 10 minutes after that, I got an email saying that I'd been, it's the email that says, your free bet banned, which I never use free bets anyway. So I'm always amazed. Oh. They either tell me that I can't have bog or I can't have free bets. And I'm like, well, I don't really need bog and I don't use free bets. But what you're actually telling me is I'm only allowed to have £1.33 on Rory McIlroy to finish both first and third, is what you're telling me.
£1.33. I thought, well, okay, I think I'm done. Like I said, I got the same email, went to log on, couldn't get, £10 on a golfer. So I tried to get 5 pence on, and I couldn't get that down. So I think £1.33. Don't know you were born. That's on. That's significantly more percentage-wise than I was offered. So,
there are casinos in Las Vegas whose minimum bet is $50. I just want to make that clear before the UK head offices get very excited about going and cleaning up in that market. I need to move over there, I reckon.
Yes, I think that's another podcast entirely, I think. But yeah, so just to bear in mind, sometimes even with the best tactics and the best approach, you may have an account with lots of longevity that's been, maybe you've kind of built it up, so you're able to get some shrewd bets down on there, and you think, oh, this account's fine, but yeah, sometimes with the best will in the world, you're going to lose bookmaker accounts, and it is just part of the game sometimes. It's why so many people multi-account. It's why everyone's getting their sister, auntie, and brother and cousin twice removed to get down for them because for this reason. So it's just something to be aware of. You might find with some firms you get a lot more leeway, but ultimately, from my point of view, I didn't want to leave a large sum of money in an account because we also know bookmakers are difficult at withdrawal. Yeah. Not deposit. You can deposit as much as you want, or that's what they wish for. You can stick as much as you want. Obviously, they have some restrictions now. They're going to ask far fewer questions than if you go to say, oh, there's 20 grand in my account, can I withdraw that? Mr. Ling, let's just sit down and can you send me a picture of your shoe size? Can we have your inside leg measurements?
Could I ask, how much of your net worth would you be willing to leave in Betfred in an online account, Pete?
A very, very small proportion, I would have to say.
And has that changed over time? Would it have been larger before, or have you always been quite risk averse?
No, I would have left a lot more in. I think I spoke in previous podcast. I had a substantial amount in another bookmaker account, and they were being difficult, and it caused
that brings stress,
issues, doesn't it? Cause stress, yeah, it was. It was like one night I couldn't withdraw it, and I was up half the night. I've got small children, so always up half the night, but up worrying about that, and it does cause that stress. So I feel like you get to a point, and each person has their own comfort level. But if you look at it from the bookmaker point of view as well, because the bigger the sum, the more likely they are going to be difficult, I imagine. And from my experience, anyway, the more likely if you want to take out £800, they're going to be it's not going to be an issue for them. But if you want to take out, I don't know, maybe they have a threshold of 20 grand, anything over that, they're going to check that. They're going to really investigate that and make sure that, there's no loophole for them to get out of paying you.
Yeah, and that sum's come, the size of that sum's come way down in the last 10 years. I think I wouldn't have blinked at withdrawing £10,000 a decade ago from an online bookmaker. And now, genuinely, I would be nervous. I would be nervous about whether I would see all of that money or more importantly, whether I have a fight on my hands that I can't be bothered to have to get my hands on that money. So You see the court case in Spain against Bet365 last week?
I did. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what to think about it, but good on them and good on the Spanish bettors, especially those particular guys that took. So this is, if nobody knows, this is some people were restricted at Bet365 in Bet365 restricted. There's obviously a culture of fairness in Spain that doesn't necessarily exist in either the UK or Australia or America, which says this is a skill game, and it's unfair if only one person wins. And the court has upheld and basically told both Betfair and Bet365 to unrestrict their accounts. Whether that has larger repercussions of, whether the odds now have to be terrible or whatever, will be very interesting to see. But I'm keeping an eye on it. But I think I'd be a lot more comfortable with my money in a Spanish bookmaker, the way that their courts seem to protect the consumer over there.
Yeah, well, it's good that you mentioned that, Tom, because I have lined up for a future pod Miguel he runs the value betting blog site and also Winner Odds. And I believe he has, whether he's part of that, he certainly has tweeted about it and written about it. So, I mean, I don't know how much he'll be able to say if he does come on, if there's a continuing court case. But I think my question about it is, how is it being upheld? If you have a 365 account, it gets gubbed, and then you appeal, where does it go from there? Do they actually, are they actually playing ball? And, with these court cases, they seem to, lawyers like to make money, don't they? And then they'll go on and on and on. So it'd be interesting if I can get Miguel on he's able to talk about that, because, do we all need to move to Spain? I think that's the question. Tapas.
Yeah.
You play. Sounds like a good life, sitting there on the beach, placing a few bets, or dealing with Betfred or whatever from the beach. It sounds much more appealing than rainy England. But so thank you so much for being on today, Tom. I really appreciate all your insight on football and bookmakers and getting your bad bet stories as well. So thank you ever so much. And go check out the review of what we've done on the football coupon tracker. Go check out bookiebashing.net. There's a discount if you're an SBC member as well. We've also reviewed your golf tracker and your racing tracker. So, and we've only scratched the surface of what you're doing there as well. So it's a great resource, great website, and fully recommended by us. So go check it out. Thanks again then, Tom.
Yeah, cheers, Pete. Good speaking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much.